All right. So quick story time. I know we're on a time crunch or whatever, but this is important. So there's this dish called mara. It's actually like a Chinese dish, Taiwanese dish, like a couple other cultures use it, but it's like just the spiciest concoction of like red lava liquid soup you can see. Like it looks like lava. And I let it sit in the fridge for like a couple days because I ordered it and it was extra, like a whole other bag. And as spices marinate, they get even more spicy. If you've ever had chili, the next day it generally has a little bit more kick. I ate this, and within one bite, I'm coughing and choking. And this generally doesn't happen to me. I love spicy food. Against my better judgment, I ate it. And I swear to God, I almost had to go to the hospital. I was contemplating going to the hospital while I was dying in the bathroom.
Hey, Wes, are you like a big fan of spicy food?
I fucking love spicy food. Why?
So I have this theory that the more someone likes spicy food, the more into BDSM they are. And I just need you to like help me confirm if this is true or not.
God, for the podcast, I want to like go all out and like say some wacky off the wall shit. But like, I'm not into BDSM at all. It doesn't get me off. I don't enjoy watching it. I don't enjoy participating in it. But I'm not kink shaming. If people like that, they definitely should.
Okay. Let me ask you this question then. Like, how spicy do you like your food? Like, is it like the spicier the better? Like, would you like rather be like crying, sweating, like almost to the point of vomiting spicy? Or is it like on a scale of like 1 to 10, like maybe a 5 or 6?
So at one point in my life, I could eat spicy food with little detriment, but these days it does horrible, horrendous things to my digestive system. So it's not so much crying, sweating, whatever. It's more like how many days am I willing to suffer on the toilet? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Kevin, how do I feel about spicy food?
Well, there was that time that Ashley put Tabasco sauce in your salsa.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that story.
There was also the ghost pepper wings at B-Dubs with you. And then in Japan at Koko Ichiban, I'm eating food where I'm sweating. And you're like, that doesn't look enjoyable.
And then there was also the time at Rose Thai, a local Thai restaurant here in Toledo, where you went with Ashley and I, and you had to go to the bathroom to blow your nose. It was so bad.
Right. Like snout running, sweating profusely, anticipating just lava the next morning.
Your snout was running. Okay.
Yeah, you know how we do out here in the Midwest. Our snouts be running.
All right, well, that completely blows that theory out of the water, but I appreciate your input.
Hey, man, I could just be an outlier. You shouldn't end your pursuit of knowledge. You should ask more people.
Yeah, you should ask more people.
All right, Kevin?
I think there's a correlation.
I'm like legitimately surprised that you actually answered the way you did. I thought you were going to be like, all right, and moving on, let's open the show.
No, I'm sitting here and I'm like, is Lenny gonna ask me, or is do I just come off that fucking vanilla? I don't, so I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the reason I was more interested in Wes's answer is because he's living in Thailand right now, which, at least in my area of
BDSM capital, understandable. Yeah.
Nope, just meant spicy food.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from across the country and around the world. This is the Life Midwest Podcast. Welcome to episode 77, everybody. I'm your host, Kevin Palmer. We got our Thai correspondent, Wes Shirley, over there. And joining us from the state of Washington, Seattle's best, but I don't mean the coffee, Lenny Wells.
I'm living in chaos right now.
Join a washed-up musician, a communications major, and an Army veteran, all originally from the Midwest, as we explore life's endeavors that are both current events and current events. I fucked that up, but I'm going to keep going. Today, folks, a little bit of a different tone. We're going to be talking about something that was kind of inspired by something that Wes saw on Reddit. Wes, do you want to kind of preface this a little bit?
Yeah, so I came across, I guess you can call them sister posts on Reddit. There's a subreddit called Ask Reddit. You just like reddit.com/r/ask Reddit, and it'll get you there. And one was liberals of Reddit, what is your most conservative opinion? And then its sister post was conservatives of Reddit, what is your most liberal opinion? And I found them interesting. And since like I think we're generally pretty left on this show, we have to have some conservative thoughts, right? Like we have to have some type of things or concessions that make us just not radical. And I thought it'd be massively interesting to just go over those. I would be interested to learn from both of you what your most conservative thoughts are.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with a curveball, because I've really been thinking about this since you had the idea and kind of gave us the idea about doing it. Even though I agreed on doing it, I don't think I have any conservative views. And I challenge you to go, yeah, okay, bet. But I really don't think I have any conservative views anymore.
So Kevin, I think you're going to end up in a similar stance to me, and we're going to get into it. But in our discussions about the show this week, I talked about that. Like, I think that I have some views that are like conservative talking points, but when followed to their logical conclusion, are more like liberal ideas. So that's spoiler alert. That's how I'm coming at this episode. So I think that's probably like where you're gonna like end up. We can talk about that another time or later on in the show if it's even then truly a conservative idea. Sure. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things where it's like it's a great idea on paper because you want to try to find common ground with somebody else. Because I think I was reading this morning because I was trying to find I literally Googled conservative viewpoints this morning.
I'm sure that was a rabbit hole.
Oh, it was a fucking rabbit hole. But I was just trying to find something that I just was at least like, I guess. But I couldn't find anything. There was this interesting post I saw on NPR.org, which a lot of conservatives would argue is liberally biased. There are no longer 2 political parties. There are 9 subparties. And I just want to read these 9 subparties and see if anyone agrees or disagrees. But we have faith and flag conservatives, committed conservatives, populist right, ambivalent right, stressed sideliners, not making that up, outsider left, democratic mainstays, establishment liberals, and progressive left. Fair to say we all fall in that last category, boys?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Probably. I want to know what the conservative bystanders are, or the concerned bystanders are, and whatever the hell the middle one was.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we all fall in that category. So rather than just sit here and jack each other off for 30 minutes about how our most left-leaning views, thought we would start with what is the most conservative viewpoint you have, to Wes's point. So I still don't think I have any 5 minutes into the show, but Wes, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I actually have a lot of them. You might be surprised how much of a righty I am.
I like how you do that with like a Texas accent.
Goddamn right. Fucking liberals. I messed it up. All right, so I think personal responsibility and respect goes a long way. Just being disrespectful for like whatever. I'm a protester. I get punk and that's cool, but some people are just fucking overboard with it. And then also not taking personal responsibility. I know that's like a really slippery slope with conservative thought, like popular thought at least, is, oh, you should have enough personal responsibility to pay your bills and make enough money. Not that. I mean, like, if you're trying your best, that's all I care about. But there's people I've obviously met who just aren't trying their best or just aren't trying. And I think it's pretty conservative to think that personal responsibility is like a key facet to a functioning society.
Okay, Lenny.
I agree with that. There's a lot of rhetoric on the left that I think touches or like talks about personal responsibility without talking about it, and I think like the idea of privilege is one of those things. That isn't to say that I don't believe privilege exists, because it obviously does. But at what point, and this is probably like a slippery slope or like a gray area that I might get flamed for, but like at what point can you say like living conditions or, you know, the life I lead is all down to privilege and not taking responsibility for whatever actions you take or whatever actions you don't take, you know? And I understand that I'm a straight white man saying that. So, but that's exactly my point, is that like, I don't know that struggle. So, or that way of life. So I definitely see where Wes is coming from with that. And like, well, at least that's what it means to me.
Sure, but I mean, at the same time, like, is that and Wes, I'm not gonna say that I disagree with you, but I am gonna challenge you on that. Do you feel that that is a conservative principle?
I think it's more of a utilitarian principle, which would probably be more center right than like deep right or like far right. But I think that is conservative because, yeah, privilege is definitely a thing. People have varying degrees of how able they are to succeed based on their circumstances. But like, there's some really, guess I'm using this word in just the worst way possible. There's some really uneducated people who do very well because they try hard. There's some really not educated, but like literally not as intelligent, less capacity to learn, who do very well because they try really hard. And there's people who are really marginalized who do very well because they try really hard. I really dislike the blaming everything on privilege. And I fall into that sometimes. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is bullshit. I come from a poor family. I can't do anything. But really, I'm kind of just lazy a lot of the time. And after I'm done like flaming up or like wallowing in my pity or whatever, I come to that realization. It's like, no, it's just because I'm not like, you're not doing what I need to do. It's not ideal. And honestly, life could be easier, but that's not really anyone else's fault.
So, last question for you before I follow up with Lenny here is the ideology of personal responsibility a way of masking what conservatism really is? And what I mean by that is that people who hide and have kind of come out of the woodwork since 2016, the xenophobia, the bigotry, the racism, the back in my day we didn't have blah blah blah, are we just masking conservatism with a virtue and slapping a label on there saying, see, we're actually hardworking people, we're not that bad?
I think that is...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That question's super important to bring up while we're talking about this. It's a really big talking point for like multi-billion-dollar corporations and like the people who fund super conservative politicians. Like, oh, hey, don't worry that we're stealing the world from underneath you. Don't worry that we're stealing the means to production. Don't worry that we're buying your future on the penny. You should work harder and your children should work harder and you should be thankful for the pittance we give you. So that's a really good way to argue against that. So like as a virtue, yeah, like I think there's a lot of some pride in your political views. Like, oh, I'm a hard worker because I'm a conservative, but I also feel like they've probably been fed a load of bullshit by billionaires or people who pay non-billionaires as talking heads. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's definitely a point of pride for some conservatives for sure. I've witnessed it with almost everyone who's proudly a conservative. I worked my butt off for what I have. Yeah, I'm sure you did, but like a lot of people work their butt off and don't have shit.
Let's before we go to the break, let's move on to Lenny. What is your most I guess conservative thought or ideology?
I don't think that I have one that is like the most. But I will say that like one thing bothers me in the current climate is cancel culture. And what I mean by that is like, I don't have a problem with somebody being canceled because they're saying off the wall shit. But what I have a problem with is that like the idea that if you say like one thing that is like heinous, like you're done forever, but in like the context of time. And what I mean by that is like I'll just give a really good example by using myself. In the past, as like a young man and edgy fucking piece of shit teenager, I've said some pretty heinous shit that if anybody decided to go like looking for on the internet, they could probably find. And it's not a good look. But those things I've said in the past don't reflect who I am now and what my current content of character is, or at least what I hope and believe that it is. um, that's really for, I guess, other people to decide. But I think, weaponizing someone's like shitty viewpoints from, so many years ago to negate what they're doing now is like a shitty thing to do and doesn't incentivize people to change. So like I like the fuck, what was that representative's name? He was a comedian out of like New York, I think. He represented New York, and there was like a picture of him. It was like during the early Trump years or like right before Trump got elected, where he there was a picture of him when he was doing a USO tour in Afghanistan where he like pantomimed fondling somebody. And they're like, well, that was so like, and this was like in like 2003, 2004, and he had to resign over it. Like, that's kind of bullshit, I think, in my opinion, especially because like it doesn't show who that person is now. Now, I'll caveat that by saying like, you don't get to like keep saying off the wall bullshit and then be like, I can't believe like cancel culture is a thing. That's just you being shitty and not being accountable for the shitty things you say. Like when Milo Yiannopoulos had his book deal canceled, and like no publisher would work with him because he kept just spouting off like the craziest shit for at the time. And then like bitching and complaining about cancel culture. Like, no, you don't get to bitch about cancel culture when you're like being the worst person you think you can be. So that's probably like my most conservative viewpoint, is that like people need to relax and understand that people are people, and people have and can have the capacity to change and often do. But if you're gonna pounce on somebody for something that isn't what they're doing now, and force them to like I said, be canceled or like attack them for that, then it doesn't incentivize people to change, and that's just not good for anybody.
Right. Like a society needs growth and change, and that's the whole reason that we tell people to go out and get an education so that they can learn and better themselves. And I think that this is a facet of that as well, as learning and bettering yourself and learning from your mistakes. And we talk about how certain shows or certain comedians haven't aged well. And I think that that's exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about, Lenny, where it's like, was funny in 2003, not funny in 2022, but it's not something that we need to go to war over. I mean, at the same time, though, does that necessarily mean that it's a conservative point? I want to challenge you as well on that.
Well, like I said at the top of the show, I don't necessarily, my views, I wouldn't consider them conservative, but because like I said, I have ideas that are conservative talking points, but I follow them to what I view as a logical conclusion, which ends up not being conservative. So I think that talking about cancel culture, regardless, is like a hot take, no matter how you look at it. So like, I feel like there's going to be a section of leftists who think that I'm fucking stupid and that like everybody should be perfect, and that there's going to be a section of right wingers that also think I'm fucking stupid. So I think it's more of like a centrist viewpoint as opposed to like truly conservative, but it's something that we see conservatives and people on the right talk about more often as an issue than anybody else.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I think I may have thought about something that it's still not a conservative viewpoint, but not the most liberal thing I've ever said or thought of. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 77 of the Life Midwest podcast. On the other side of the break, it's your host, Kevin Palmer, Lenny Wells, and Wes Shirley. Hey, if you're looking for ways to support us, we do have a PayPal that's live. That it does cost money to run the show at paypal.me/thelifemidwest. There's also a plethora of free ways to interact with us. Well, of course, it's free, but free ways to support us by interacting with us on any of our social media platforms at The Life Midwest. You can also check out our website, thelifemidwest.com. We also have an email that you can reach out to us at support@thelifemidwest.com. Send us an email. We'll read it to you on the show. We'll read it to you and anyone else who listens to the show on the show. And no new emails to read this week, but we'll, like I said, if we ever get one, we'll read it out to you. Unless you don't want us to. We respect privacy. Before we move on to some other things that Lenny and Wes wanted to talk about in today's show, it kind of came to me. I guess I do have one thing that someone I do have one thing that one may consider I still don't think it's a conservative viewpoint, but one might say it's not a liberal viewpoint. And that is, there's a certain facet of the Democratic Party, I believe, that has the whole you're either with us or you're against us kind of mentality. And I'm sure that there are people on both sides who have this, and that's why I don't think this is a conservative viewpoint. It's more of a centrist one, kind of like Lenny's. I think in order to evangelize, and I use that term ironically, but I think in order to kind of spread your message and to get other people involved and to get other people to see your viewpoint and see your side, I think you can't necessarily have that, well, you don't like Biden, so you must be a Trump supporter. And I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I think that there's a lot of people out there who are like that. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's a dangerous precedent that's set when you just because you disagree with somebody on one thing, that doesn't make them the worst person in the world. Now, it depends on what that thing is, obviously. When you're talking about race equality or abortion rights, things like that. But I mean, I'm just saying, if somebody's different from you and isn't in your party, don't you want to change that person's point of view? And you can't do that with hate. At least that's how I feel. So again, I'm not saying everybody's like that on either side, but I think in a very divisive culture, in a very split and polarized country that we're in right now, I think it's a dangerous precedent to not try to get someone else to see your point of view with the emotion taking out. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I definitely wouldn't classify it as a conservative or even right viewpoint. If anything, and this is all hyperbole, but to me, that sounds like a left talking point, but not one that the left actually follows through on. I mean, there was a lot of that, during the 2016 election, because people were like, I don't really fucking like Hillary Clinton, and they were like, how dare you support Trump? That
exactly.
There was a lot of that. But I think people on the left are definitely more willing to be like, look, I really don't particularly care for Joe Biden, but he's definitely way better than Trump. I think that's a very honest sentiment that a lot of people are speaking out about right now. So I don't know that I would call that center or that I'd call that conservative really at all. So maybe you're right. Maybe you don't actually have conservative viewpoints anymore. It's been all sucked out of you.
I really don't. There's two things that have changed that, because I know there are people in my life who know me that at one point I was a conservative person. And there's two things that really changed that. The first is the pandemic and how people responded to it. And how, to me, it's like there was no point in throwing a fit about masking up and social distancing and just wanting to protect your neighbor. Which ended up being a very big my rights thing for the conservatives. The other thing that kind of followed suit with that, the more research I did, was and honestly, this is what the Democratic Party needs to hang their hat on with all of their campaigns and talking points against conservatives. But you can't blame poor people for being poor. You can't. You can't. You can't say it's because of the people who have nothing that you have nothing. They're taking away all of your taxes. No, you're not. No, they're not. You know what I mean? So it's just, you can't blame the poor for being poor. And so those are the two things that really changed my mind. But anyways, I want to move on from this because I know Wes had some talking points he wanted to cover before we close out the show today.
I just wanted to read a couple. So like, we shouted out the subreddit and what inspired this already. And there's some good ones on here. So the top comment is by someone named Knife Ass, which might actually be Lenny, because the comment says, canceling people for things they tweeted years ago is dumb as fuck. We'll just collapse that one. The next one is CNN sucks. The next one, we shouldn't increase taxes until there is a full review of whether the tax in question is already being effectively used. I think that would be considered very conservative because that's like one of their main talking points. But that's just a talking point for them. So like, I would say I agree with that. And that's one of my conservative views, but it's not actually conservative. It's, again, centrist. And then I feel the liberal leaving my body every time my paper straw dissolves in my cup.
Yeah, oh my God. Okay. All right. We found one. I have that. That's me. That was me.
Is that a thing in Ohio now? Like the paper straws?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Cause I was like, I remember when that like came into effect, like out here, and people were like, oh, it's fine. You won't even notice. And then like I used a paper straw and I was like, this is like the biggest piece of dog shit I've ever had the displeasure of. God damn it, Vader. Speaking of the biggest piece of dog shit, no, it was so bad, and like I completely understand like why people hate them and like why like it was so dumb. Just use like a biodegradable plastic.
And it's funny because most of those straws are coated in PFAS, which is like a forever chemical that's bad for everyone and the environment. One of the comments though says, banning plastic straws is bullshit. If we wanted to make real impact to the waste stream, ban clamshell packaging and all styrofoam that's used to ship flat pack, wish furniture from Asia. And then why is it our problem that there's this giant trash heap in the ocean when plastic straws are tiny, negligible, and generally biodegradable? I'm not sure how true that is, but
I did see someone was talking about how they used to order tools from Germany, and they would just show up in a brown box with like some packing paper, like all things that are recyclable or like, you know, reusable. And what they started doing like over time is they opened up like an American like office basically. And so now anytime like they order something, it comes from the American office and it's like wrapped in all this like all this fucking god awful packaging that is just doesn't need to be there.
Next week on the Life Midwest, breaking news: America is wasteful. Lenny, you had something else that you wanted to bring up too before we go to the shout outs today.
Yeah, guns. I like guns.
Brother.
Shocking as like the military veteran likes guns. I wholeheartedly believe in the Second Amendment, which is definitely a conservative view. But I also, again, like I said at the top of the show, following it to a logical conclusion, there needs to be heavier restricted access to guns. And
absolutely,
I feel like if your guns like end up being like taken away, then you probably should never have had guns in the first place. And I'll go on record and say, like, including myself, you know, I think most people think of themselves as responsible gun owners. Like, I know I certainly do. But just because you think you are doesn't actually mean that you are. Like, at the risk of opening myself up to armed robbery, like at home, you know, I've got 2 young children and a teenager. All of our guns are in a safe, and the ammunition is stored separately from the actual gun itself. So So like I don't keep anything just loaded hanging out around the house. That's a responsible thing to do.
But to your point earlier, though, when you follow it to a logical conclusion, you and I probably agree, though, that the Second Amendment was written long before the AR-15 existed. And so the Second Amendment was created with a very, very different weapon in mind.
I'll just say that I like guns, and I think people should have access to guns, but I think that the path to that access should be heavily regulated and, like, you know, to prevent things like Uvalde or Sandy Hook or Columbine or whatever the next one that hasn't happened yet is. So that's my view on guns. But take it from my cold dead hands, Obama.
I agree, for the record. I don't think we should have like crazy machine guns. Like, I guess like a submachine gun assault rifle is still kind of crazy, but like, you can't mow down crowds of people with a single weapon. I think that's pretty dangerous to have just like laying around.
Yeah, well, this isn't like the Guns Midwest, so we'll save that. We'll shelf that conversation, I guess. Yeah. Anyways, there's not really like a good way to like compromise or like end the segment, so to speak.
Well, hold on. No. This is good. I don't think there's anything wrong with like, it's not only a conservative opinion, but it's also just a reasonable opinion. Like, there's guns all over the fucking country. You're former military. You like guns. You're allowed to like guns. How do you feel about the NRA?
I fucking hate the NRA.
Well, perfect.
So,
yeah.
I think anybody that makes, you know, money off the backs of slaughtered children deserves, you know, a fisting with a spiked chainmail glove. And I think they also deserve the Hitler treatment from Little Nicky.
Yeah, the pineapple. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I think we found something that we can all agree upon, and that just makes it a great time to head to the shout-outs. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Lenny, who do you want to shout out this week?
shout out to my wife for getting the kids ready for school today. Happens every day, whether I'm here or not. Recording at a weird time. She did the best she could. I know she wasn't trying to make it quiet, but it was still kind of quiet. I think all things considered.
Except for Vader.
Yeah, except for that dumbass. I just, for anybody listening, I love my dog, but he's stupid. Shout out to you guys. Wes, this is a great conversation this week. Great idea, Kevin. I respect how your views have changed over time, and it's been heartening to see. It's hard to like, it's really hard like when you like really care about somebody so much, and just like, this isn't like directed at you specifically, but like to see them like say like some like dumb stuff, you're like, I love you, but damn, that was stupid. So I know people say that about me all the time, like my wife on a daily basis. So anyways, I'm glad to see your views changing and having, you know, being able to make changes, and I hope more people can do that one way or the other. So shout out to people who are changing their views. And fuck Dana Loesch.
Wes, how about you?
I want to give a shout out to you, far right-wing conservative nutwings. You guys are awesome. Thanks for doing this episode with me. I want to give a shout out to my wife. I locked her in the bedroom and threw away the key, and now I have to figure out how to get her back out of there. Shout out to spicy food. My internals love you. And yeah, a shout out to like reasonable people. You don't have to be like a centrist to like be reasonable. You just have to like not be so far up one party's ass that like you can see that the other party sometime has relevant views.
Totally agree. I want to shout out my incredible fiance, Ashley, not for the same reason that I do every week, but this week is a little different because, you know, I always talk about how I've learned and grown because of her, and she is my better half. And she has really helped me see the points that I have long missed when it comes to liberalism and progressive views. And so I really owe her a lot of gratitude when it comes to the mentalities and the viewpoints that I carry so proudly today. with being a leftist. So a really big shout out to her as she's really helped me grow and become the person that I am today. And I may be I'm better off because of that, I think. So just a huge shout out to Ashley. I really appreciate her. Want to shout out the what was that group of the 9 people? Hold on. Stressed Sideliners. I want to shout out Stressed Sideliners today. If you're feeling stressed, come to the left. We have cookies, and some of us still have guns. So just not tomahawks. So
they certainly need the shout out. They need the love.
They certainly need the shout out. I shout at anyone who's stressed these days. So if you're going through it, folks, that's going to do it for us this week. Don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite listening platform. Really helps out the show and getting discovered and spreading. Tell your friends about us. Share us on social media, and interact with our social media manager, Lenny, on any of our major social platforms at The Life Midwest. Send us an email at support@thelifemidwest.com or check out our website at, you guessed it, thelifemidwest.com. Folks, we'll talk to you next Saturday and every Saturday here on the Life Midwest podcast. Take care. Have a good one.
Later, nerds.